Hello, and welcome again to another episode of 5 Plain Questions, a podcast that proposes 5 questions to Indigenous artists, creators, musicians, writers, movers and shakers, and culture bearers, people in the community that are doing great things for their communities. I'm Joe Williams, your host for this conversation. My goal is to showcase these amazing people in our Indigenous communities from around the region and country. I want to introduce you to D.Y. Begay. D.Y. is a 5th-generation weaver. Her unique weaving skills have been handed down through the weavers of her family. She grew up surrounded by female weavers, where she was exposed to herding and shearing sheep, carding and spinning wool, harvesting plants for dyeing, and learning to weave in the traditional Navajo fashion. D.Y.'s tapestries reflect her family's weaving tradition and the unique vegetation she has known since her childhood. This spiritual connection to the plants yields natural colors that are transformed into evocative land formations on her loom. Many of D.Y.'s interpretation landscape tapestries reflect her Navajo identity and the place of her birth. These weavings encompass her perception of the natural beauty of the land and the descriptive colors of the desert where D.Y. grew up in the high country of the Navajo reservation. D.Y.'s current work combines her mastery of traditional weaving with a concentration on incorporating diverse design concepts. This sentiment is reflected in her imagery and the use of non-reservation color combinations, uncharacteristic of most Navajo weavers, and conveys her aspiration to discover new ideas and expressions. D.Y.'s ultimate goal is to capture the natural beauty of Mother Earth and translate her personal vision into the warp and weft of her weavings. D.Y. has exhibited her weavings in major museums and galleries, including the National Museum of the American Indian, the Smithsonian Institution, the Museum of Northern Arizona, the Minneapolis Institute of Art, the Peabody Essex Museum, the C.N. Gorman Museum, the Wheelwright Museum of the American Indian, the Kennedy Museum of Art, the Mesa Arts, and the National Museum of Scotland. Her tapestries have been collected by major museums and published internationally, and they have been acquired by both private collectors and major institutions in North America and Europe. Her many credits include co-curating exhibits in Athens, Ohio, in New York, and in Santa Fe. Her early schooling was at the boarding schools on the Navajo Reservation, St. Michael's High School, and later Arizona State University, where she received her bachelor's degree in fine arts and art education. With that said, let's start the 6th season of the podcast with D.Y. Begay. D.Y. Begay, thank you so much for joining me on 5 Plain Questions. It's really great to have you here.
Yeah, yes. I'm happy to be here, joining you and talking to you.
Oh, it's such an honor. It's such an honor. Would you be able to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, and what it is that you do.
Yes, I will introduce myself the way we introduce ourselves as Dene. Say Tótshoníí Sanjle, Tachinii Dene Bashishchin. Sanjakin Eshache dat Ashin Eshin Nali dat Kut Dene Sanjle, Di Besha. You want me to translate that?
Please.
Okay. So what I just, this is just, a very appropriate in the way we introduce ourselves is by our clan. And what I said was, I'm born to the Tótshoníí, which translates into big water, and born for the Tachinii clan, which translates into red running into earth. And my maternal grandfather is of the Tsenjaken clan, which means among the cliff dwellers. And my paternal grandfather is the Ashin, the salt people. And my clan is my identity and acknowledges that I'm a Nastan, mean earth people, earth or the earth surface being.
You've been creating for quite some time now. Could you share with the listener the type of work that you do, and where did that begin? What's the genesis of your work?
Well, I'm originally am from Arizona. Salina, Arizona is my community, and that's where I was raised and brought up. So what I do as an artist is I always attribute this information because weaving just didn't happen. um, I come from a long lineage of weavers, and I'm a fifth generation Tótshoníí weaver, which is my clan, from Tachinii, which is a community up in the northeastern area of the Navajo reservation. And I can say that my heritage and my roots are deeply woven into my identity and my work. And I am blessed to have come into the art of weaving through the matrilineal Tótshoníí woman. And I always say that I'm a fifth generation weaver. Uh, and Salani is my home. It is still my home today. But I also live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So naturally, I drift back and forth throughout the year.
We
You can ask me questions because sometimes I just forget.
No worries, no worries. No, that's great. That's great. So we often talk about our influences in on this program. It's one of the questions. Throughout our lives, we're influenced in different ways. Early on, we have those influences, and those may change over time. And what's influencing us today? So, would you be able to talk about your biggest influences and or who is influencing you today?
Um, yeah, that's not an easy question.
Mm,
But I sort of go back to my early, life, and what I always want to attribute to, my influences as a weaver is the most notable person would be Tótshoníí, which is my great 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 grandmother who survived and has, maintained, you know, the place where we live today, Salon. And she was a weaver. And so the weaving tradition has been passed on for, generations. Like I said, I'm a fifth generation weaver. So, in that sense, I feel honored that, she has carried on that tradition and we still carry that tradition today. Um, so the second person I thought of was my late father, Ki Yazi Begay, who naturally instilled our traditions, our language. So, I'm bilingual. Navajo is my first language. And he also encouraged us to get an education and also to explore, the outside world. And, he had always, encouraged us to learn, you know, outside our home, outside our hogan, because that's just naturally what happens. You go out in the world, you go to school, and you have to expose yourself to, all those changes. And he was a very encouraging person. He didn't speak English. So, he said, learn what you can, explore, ask questions. So he's always been a great, a great person. He's always encouraged us, the children. Um, and the third person that I think of is she's non-native. Her name is Helena Hernmark, and she's Swedish and a weaver of the Swedish, weaving tradition. I have known her since the 1980s, early 1980s. I met her when I was living in New Jersey, and she has, deeply, influenced me too. And I have always admired her work as a master weaver of the Swedish tradition. She has inspired me, encouraged me to continue weaving and to express my ideas. And I always remember she once told me that I had a great sense of design and colors. And that statement remains with me and it's a reminder. So sometimes when don't have an idea what I'm doing with my colors or design, I think of her, I think of that statement. You have a great sense of design and colors. Express that.
mm.
So that's a good reminder for me. Yeah, a lot of these people, have impacted, my life and my creative journey.
As you're talking about family, I think back to when I was growing up, and my grandmother, who was born in 1904,
Mhm.
she and her daughters, my aunties, they would make star quilts in her home. And I remember coming to visit with my father, and they'd be around the tables and they'd have all their patterns laid out, and
Mhm.
they would all speak in Dakota. Um, they even my father and all of their generation, they were all first language speakers. They didn't learn English till later, and so I have these memories of family just joking and laughing and just having these conversations in Dakota, just working, just having family
Mhm.
time, working and creating these beautiful quilts. Do do you have memories, early memories of family sitting around together, talking or creating together? Does something come to mind? Thinking back.
Yes. I mean, it happens all the time. I was just home last week and, getting together with my sisters. I have two sisters that are, weavers too. And we still have sheep, which we raise. You know, a lot of our, weaving starts with the sheep that we have today. And maintaining the sheep and, shearing and, processing the fleece. And actually, that's what we've been doing. So just getting together with my sister and chasing the sheep and trying to tie them down so we can prepare them for shearing. There's always laughter. There's always, conversation about, the sheep. What are they going to eat and how are they doing? What fleece and how many bags of fleece will we be able to get? So, and it still exists today. And with my two sisters, which, we get together, actually, one of them is traveling from Tulsa today to
Hmm.
join us for the Herd Indian Market Show. And I know that, conversation will go on, throughout the week when we're together. And it's always about, how do you do this? Or, who did you learn from? Or how should I do this? Questions about, weaving. And, I've been mentoring my sisters and they've really have come to a great understanding and they're committed to carrying on this weaving tradition, which is great because we have the sixth generation coming up and a lot of some of my nieces and even nephews have tried weaving. They have experimented and they've learned the technique, but later on hopefully they will be weavers too. Yes, I remember my grandmother, when we used to go visit her, she would be sitting at the loom. And there was always a loom in progress in my aunt's house, my grandmother's house, or my mother's house. It was probably the most important equipment in the house.
Hmm.
And, that was great. I mean, we had the exposure. Personally had a lot of exposure growing up, uh, seeing the woman weaving. It could also be shearing, herding the sheep, uh, cleaning the wool, washing the wool, spinning, carding, sometimes dyeing. So, it's a process that never ceases. You're herding sheep, you got to feed them, you got to take them out. So I naturally was very fortunate to have that exposure. And, that's what, when my sisters ask questions, I go back and try to remember the information. But it also is an experience that I've been going through the rest for the good better part of my life too. Yes, conversation about weaving and might not necessarily just be about weaving, but we uh talk about, tell stories about our experience, my travel, who I've met, what weavers, what artists, and what are my influences, what have I learned. So there's always information. Then we always go back and say, well, mom used to say this, dad told us not to do this. Yeah, it's a, I think it's a, it's a learning process because I get to hear my sisters with their information and their questions and or even other weavers, sometimes we get together and talk about weaving, techniques. process.
So your journey through this uh, career, I guess, so to speak, how has that developed for you? You I believe you went to it was at the University of Arizona. You received a teaching degree there.
Arizona State University.
Sorry,
Um,
correction. S-
uh,
s-
so my education actually started with boarding school. So I'm a product of the boarding school era.
hmm, hmm,
And I started school at Chinle boarding school. I think I was about 6 years old. And boarding school experience is a heavy and a complex, subject. Um, one, it's one of those things, they were challenging, and the experience, oftentimes was cruelty, but those experiences has also shaped my determination and the path forward. It has really opened my eyes, and it has, it has given me an ability to, really go beyond, what I had experienced. And yes, starting school at age 6, when you only knew one language, your natural language, and then being indoctrinated in a very, cruel way that stop speaking Navajo, you learn English, and there was no transition. There was no, um, you know, it wasn't like, a nice transition trying to learn English, because we were punished if we were, speaking Navajo. But, that gave me a lot of determination that I wanted to, you know, become, you know, uh, comfortable in, in both, lifestyle and the language. Uh, and I know a lot of, students I've gone to school with through the boarding school, have been, affected by, the way, uh, you know, the language was taught, or the way the classes, were taught. So yeah, that's, the early part of my, education. But as I, I've done that. I've had experiences, but and it gave me a lot of determination to move forward. I did go to college, and I've, graduated from Arizona State University. But before my first year of college, I actually, left home because I wanted to see what was out the side of Chinle or Tzalani. I wanted to explore what was beyond those Triska Mountains, the mountain range that I'm so used to seeing. And I went to Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana,
oh,
which was, an eye opener too, because you had to learn to, you know, independency. Uh, Mom and dad weren't there
mhm,
to wake you up, which, growing up with uh, um, 9 siblings, we all had to take care of each other. But then my siblings weren't around, so there was no help with, other things that I needed to do. And yeah, independent living was about, going away from home. And it has taught me to navigate my lifestyle, studying, making decisions on my own about the direction of my studies. And, it opened my eyes, to what was out there. Um, so, then I transferred back to Arizona State University because I wanted to get my teaching certificate in Arizona. And, the transition was good because, the initial, 1 year in Montana really taught me some independency.
mm,
And at Arizona State University, it was a big school. I had to learn that. Rocky Mountain College was a small school. And I was only in number at Arizona State University. But I pursued and I got involved with a lot of my studies. And also at that time, in I think my junior year, I took a fiber art class. And yeah, I'm glad I did because the professor was a young professor who taught us about different weaving culture from all parts of the world. And I became very interested in my own weaving And it really helped me transition back to my weaving, what I've known, what my family did. And I became very interested, and I started studying about my own type of weaving. Um, and that was really good. So it really sort of got me on the road to what I wanted to do later on. And then I think other things is like museum work, doing a lot of consultation with museum, which helped me to learn about all the different types of weaving from different culture, and even about my own. When I was doing some work at the back then, it was the American Indian Museum in New York. I've learned about historical material, historical weavings, and I could never find a name attached to those weaving. And that's also another project that really got me back, to my weaving, to learn about some of these historical material. Where did they come from? Who made them? And the styles, the colors, the techniques. So that's very good. And today I continue to work with museums because you never stop learning. There's always something new. There's always something different.
Mm, mm. I definitely want to talk more about your exhibitions and the museums, because you have a new one coming up with the National Museum of the American Indian. Is it in April, I believe? So
Yeah, but it opened in September 2024 and it's going to close July of 2025. Yeah.
sorry. Yes. Um, so I wanted to ask, with your exhibitions, when was sort of the, I don't want to say shift so much, but uh, when when did you start exhibiting your work from, I guess, well, I have to edit this here. I'm getting lost in my words. Uh, what stage, or what was the shift for you to really focus in on your work, and it started to be displayed and exhibited in different institutions and organizations?
Um, Gosh, after college, um, I got married in, I think, 1982. Um, and my former husband was from New Jersey. So after we both got out of college and, worked, I taught for a year and a half. And we eventually moved back east to be with his family because his mother uh, had multiple sclerosis and he wanted to spend some time with the family. So we did. And moving to the East Coast was uh, extremely different.
Mm,
I didn't know anybody. It was a different world. It was an eye opener. And I didn't really know what I was going to do. Um, and, on the East Coast, because I didn't know anybody, I didn't have any family there. And I started, went into New York City and did some exploring and went to some museums. And I discovered the American Indian Museum. It was called American Indian Museum then. And that's when the exhibits that they had on some of the floors had quite a few Navajo textiles, like cheese blankets and early blankets. And I became very interested in learning about collections. And then I got an artist in residency with them. And I started, I started a lot of research and started talking with curators, and I've learned a lot about, some of the historical, textiles. And that even involved techniques and, color analysis and, dating, and did critical information I didn't find were the names of weavers. So I think that really helped me determine that, any weaving that I will create, my name will be attached to it. Information will be attached to it, the process, the technique, the designs, how I was inspired and why I was weaving. So that's when it evolved. So it was really good because I had the time and, and I really wanted to learn more about my weaving, which I know how to do, but I didn't know that, museums collected, Navajo textiles that, that didn't have a name attached to, the weaver's name were not attached. Uh, So that's when it really started. And then I, set up my workspace with a loom and my family shipped me yarn or tools from Arizona, and I got back into weaving. And I really focused on my, the technique, and also learning about, dyeing, the dyeing process, making, using, natural sources. And it really gave me a lot of information and a lot of, determination to say, "Oh, this is, what I love and has been in my family, for generations." And so that's where it all started. And I couldn't tell you when. I think I started exhibiting at some of the native art shows, and that also was, a really good influence and inspiration, and it helped me what marketing is about and how to present my work and how, the process of, getting into shows and, talking about your work, marketing, but, and also keeping that weaving tradition alive, you know. Um, so it's a long story. And then, it all sort of evolved after that. Um, doors open and, people um, came to, purchase my work, museums, foundations, and it was, all my weaving really has a lot of personal information and personal, uh, personal journals, information about the process because I want this information to be, you know, preserved so other, young weavers will be able to, find this information if it's helpful to them, great, because that was the problem I had in the beginning when I started working with museum was I didn't have, you know, the basic information about why were they collected, who collected it, and where were they collected, where are the weavers. So that's I put my information on my, tapestries, which could be journals, could be dating it, could be the material, it could be, my inspiration. So all that information are attached to the tapestries that I weave.
As you talk about this, I think about within the museum world how many of the items from the past, uh, they were documented by who the collector was or the family
Mhm,
of the collectors,
mhm,
and the information on who created the pieces and those details were lost generations ago.
yeah.
Oftentimes, people, non-natives would be on the reservations working, and they would buy pieces from people that were living on the res. Like my family, like my grandmother was a doll maker, and
Mhm,
a dentist would purchase items from her. Well, when he when he passed, the family, and this is common with so many in so many instances where the families would then donate these items to an institution, but the name of the artist is lost, and
mhm,
I think it's wonderful that in a sense, you're not only documenting yourself in the work that you're creating, but you're leaving a path for those behind you who are learning the process to be able to understand how you did this and
mhm,
um, the inspiration and all of that of how you do this.
mhm. Yeah, it's very important, especially for the next generation.
Hmm.
Um, is my great 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 grandma Tótshoníí preserved that information.
Mm.
And, it's part of my family tradition to, maintain that, to, pass it on to the next generation, you know. And I think it's extremely important in any medium, basket making, beadwork. Those are all, information that we should continue to pass, on to the next generation.
Mhm. And with all of those items and what you're doing today, I mean, it's all contemporary work, right? The work
Mhm,
that was created at the time and work that's being created today is work that's of today, right? It's always contemporary work.
mhm.
Um, I do want to move on to the next question about opportunities, but before we do that, what are some of the messaging and the themes that are part of your work? What is it that you really want people to know about what you're doing?
Well, I think the retrospective that I have at the National Museum of the American Indian today uh, has a lot of that information. What I'm doing today, and how did I come up with these, colors, designs, ideas. Um, you should go see it.
Yes, yes.
uh, um, but you know, it has opened up a lot of information. Um, what I do, you know, and each piece that's on exhibit, there are 48 tapestries on exhibit. Sublime Light, tapestry art of D.Y. Begay. And each, tapestry has a journal attached to it from the day I began a piece to the
Mm,
day it comes off the loom. Uh,
mm,
and a lot of it is personal information, which is, I, didn't put, personal information. And, but information you'll read is about the weaving itself, that particular weaving, the process, getting inspired, or, a daily journal, progress, colors, design. How did I come up with this? Why did I choose a specific color? And it's really reflective. All that information is reflective of place, place where I grew up, Talani. I mean, literally, I have a home on the reservation in Talani. And literally, when I wake up in the morning, I go outside. The presentation of the morning sunrise is there. It provides a beautiful story. It provides colors. It provides formations and images. Those are my great inspiration.
mm,
And then at the other end of the day, the sunset provides a whole new idea and inspiration. The colors are different. Sometimes they're dramatic, sometimes they're soothing, sometimes they're beautiful, sometimes they're just, one color. And I can't help it but, to be inspired by that. So a lot of that information appears in my tapestry, the colors, the design, and even just the feel of it. Oftentimes people will say, oh, your, pollen path is very, very soothing. It's very inspiring. And a lot of people relate to the sense of the presentation of each tapestry. And and I do personally feel it too. Yes, I don't weave if I'm not in a good mood. Um, but my practice for weaving is that's the first thing I do in the morning, because when the sun is coming through the windows where my loom is, the colors are vivid, the colors are alive, they're awake, and it really, you know, energizes my energy to, lay in the colors and, work, because the light, the sunrise has brought this energy in, through the window. And that's my daily practice.
mm,
Um, and, with the exhibit, it also, we also have a table that has dye samples, photographs, and video that my son did a lot of the video, did a lot of videographer, work on where we live. And then there's a whole presentation of the landscape and the family too. And so the, transition and translation is all there. through the videographer. So you can really see, and there's a lot that we just couldn't, include in the exhibit too. It's all there. So place is very important for me. And it's the place where I grew up. It's the place where my great 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 grandmother, lived too. So it's it's a continuation of you know of carrying on that traditional tradition that my great great grandmother Tótshoníí has left, and that's my biggest inspiration.
Mm.
I talked about her in the beginning about she's one of my mentor, and one of my what's the word, one of my you know influencer, or and it's somebody that I look up to, even though she's not here, but I've heard stories about her. Um, and I picture her in my mind. But back then, she did not have all the conveniences that we have today. And I think about how complicated, or what was the hardship like? Maybe there was no hardship because she lived a good basic life, and her life was about the sheep, her weaving, and her family.
Yeah, the impact, the influence that she has had on your life is
Yes. Oh,
substantial.
yes.
Mm. So in our lives, we have opportunities that present themselves in different forms. In early on in certain ways, and then later on they present themselves, or we make our opportunities later in different ways. Can you talk about how the opportunities have presented themselves to you?
um, there probably are a lot of different ideas. When I first saw that question, how do opportunities present themselves to you? Um, the first thing that came to my mind was inspirational opportunities happens every day, correct? um, like I talked about the sunrise, the colors, the sunset and the sunrise, just you know, observing the landscape around me. Uh, and especially out at home in Salon, just observing the light and the shadows, the change, shadows change the perspective, the patterns, the lights, geometric shapes, all catch my eye as opportunities. um, and even having access to my family stories. We're always talking about sheep, we're always talking about weaving, we're always talking about DY, what else, have you, learned from your travels? Those are opportunities, for me too. I've traveled a lot, and there are great opportunities, that I have collaborated with, or learn and watch other weavers, native weavers and non-native weavers. Those are great opportunities, and it's the collaboration, and we have to do that. I can't keep a lot of my weaving teaching and a lot of my weaving techniques to myself. It was meant for everybody. It was meant for who is interested and who would like to learn. And the most important to me is a tradition that we have that has to be preserved. So opportunities does happen every day. I just have to stop and say, okay, thank you. This is an opportunity. I had a good meal today, so now I can weave. um, or I talked to somebody about some weaving techniques. That's an opportunity. So, and this is an opportunity, having a conversation, and so maybe some people will listen to it or hear about it. That it's an opportunity for me because it's what I want to share. It's what I've learned, and you know it should be passed on.
Your interpretation of this question is unique, and I
It's probably different. Yeah.
no, it's great. I love it when someone comes back with this question, in a way that hasn't been talked about before. It's
Mm.
wonderful. Thank you for that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, opportunity. There's an opportunity every minute or every hour. Even if you just, sat down and read a book, that's an opportunity for me because I got a very busy uh, lifestyle. So I feel, I feel, I'm always thankful that if I can sit down for 30 minutes and read
Mhm.
uh, something that doesn't relate to what I'm doing, just a novel, and that's an opportunity. I consider that an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what would you say to the 18 to 22-year-old that's listening to this
Um,
conversation?
um, I mean, there is a lot to say, uh, but what I can say is I actually wrote this down because it's a big subject. It's a big
Mm,
topic. Um, to those at this pivotal stage in life, keep building up on your dreams, keep asking questions, be open to exploring new paths, even those you may not have considered before. Listen to your elders because they carry knowledge and stories that will guide you. And stay connected to your traditions, your language, and your family. These are the things that will ground you as you move forward.
wonderful. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, what's on the horizon for you? What's coming up next?
Look, well, one thing after working on the exhibit, I'm back to my loom, back to my workspace.
Okay.
But, you know, the retrospective Sublime Light, the tapestry art of DYBK has been a big part of my work project in the last, 3.5 years. Um, but, you know, the museum has done a great job presenting the exhibit, and then they've had a lot of wonderful feedbacks, and it's also um, a an exhibit that will help other people, other weavers, other artists, um, and having all the stories and the information is you know that is added to the exhibit. It's not like it's not like a I'm not saying that painting is not good, but it's not like a big, commercial, exhibit. But the exhibit has an attachment with a lot of wonderful ideas, stories, from a personal, artist as a tapestry artist. And I think the museum has given me a great opportunity to present my work, my tapestries. So, but my continuation with museum work will continue, working with other museums, consulting, particularly in the textile, area. That will continue. And then I also, have been involved with different, companies, Schumacher, which is a design company that I'm doing some work with them to recreate some of my design for their products, which is, uh, Schumacher. So I'm working with them, and I'm working with a new young company called Whoosh, and it's Hosh. And actually, I can send you some information about that. And we're working with Native artists from different medium, painters, clay people, beadworker, weavers. And what we're doing is telling story about their work. They are telling their story about their work, how they apply, what inspires them. And so uh, they present some designs that we can reproduce on clothing, t-shirts, sweatshirt. That's what we're doing now, and it's been launched now, so it's on on the internet. So that's been wonderful. I because it's really working with an artist on a one-on-one, and will it, it will help them get their work out there, and will financially help them, and also the exposure is important because we've been doing some interviews with some of the artists, and it's a very personal information, and I think that is important. Um, and so yeah, I've been enjoying that, so I have a little more time to do that.
Mm.
And so, like I said, I've gotten back to my loom, so I returned to the loom to work on some weaving projects that have been on hold while I was working on Sublime Light. Uh, so I'm enjoying that. So and everything else, like other museum projects. I'm been going back home more often now to spend time with my sisters and my family. Um, and we're waiting for spring so we can start foraging some plants for dyeing. And we're waiting till the weather gets nicer so we can start shearing the sheep. Uh,
Mm.
so there's always something.
That's exciting. I will we'll put the links in the show notes of what's going on, so our listener can be able to check out all the different things that you're doing. So we'll make sure that they can access that. Um, the I was going to ask you one other question. Sorry, my mind just this never happens. I feel a little scattered this morning. I don't know why.
Too much information.
No, no, no. I just yeah. Uh, the with the current exhibition in DC, there's also a book that's attached to that as well, and so we'll put a link for the viewer
Oh,
to check
yes.
out that book
Yeah.
too. So it's a beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful book.
Yes. They did a great job uh, getting the information across. Um, and some of the writers, Jennifer Denadale is Dene. So her perspective is really good. America Meredith, just wonderful information, contemporary perspective and, the more traditional perspective. And I'm just in between everything else.
Mm,
But it is, yeah, it was great. It was really a project where I would learn a lot about, you know, building an exhibit from ground one.
mm,
And
mm.
it's funny because people don't realize, how much work an exhibit entails. But I'm glad I did that. I'm glad that my story is out in public, um, and I'm proud of it. That and I'm honored that the museum has produced the exhibit.
Well, I look forward to seeing it when I get out there this spring. So I'm
Yes,
very excited.
yeah,
Very excited.
please do. Actually, my sisters and I are going to be out there the first weekend in April, April 5th and 6th, I think. We're going to do some public programming of the process. So it'd be, again, it was like Saturday and Sunday. They have these public programming, I think, I don't know how often they do this, but so I've been washing wool. So we're going to take, the material, the source, and the loom, just sort of like because they would like to present that to the public. That this is where it starts, and this is
Mm.
what happens, and this is what the loom looks like. So it's like a demonstration process. So my sisters, the two sisters that are weaving, are going to be out there with me to do the presentation of the demonstration of the process.
Okay. I think I've had some conversations with some of the folks out there, and I think we wanted to coordinate the release of this episode with some of your public programming. So,
Oh,
um,
great!
yeah, no, this podcast is independent of their museum, but since this is happening, and I really want to be able to share your story at a right point, I think that's where the April um, was in the back of my mind. So, yeah, great,
Oh,
great,
wonderful!
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Last question. It's our fun. Oh, actually, before I jump into that, is there a way our listener can get in touch with you or check out your work? What's the best way for them to do that?
Um, I think the best way would be just the email uh, or through my website,
The
which
website?
is,
Okay.
www.navajoindian.com. Um, I am on social media too, but I'm not very active, because I'm so big, too busy. But there's a lot of information out there on social media.
Mhm.
Um, through the museum too. Eventually, with the whole social media changing, it's just like hard. I'm not like enthused about doing that right now. Um, but I think the website would be probably the most useful way to get a hold of me.
Okay. I'll put a link to your website for them
Yeah.
to check it
Uh,
out. So, all right. Yeah. After all the nonsense happening, we've pulled off
mhm.
Twitter. We're not having anything to do with them anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
not worth it. Not worth it at
I
all.
know.
Well, DY, thank you so much for being on the program and sharing your story.
Mhm.
I've really been looking forward to this, and so I'm really grateful that you were able to sit down with me. Thank you.
Mhm.
And that does it for this episode of Five Plain Questions. I want to thank DY again for her time and sharing her story with us. I was hoping to make it out to DC for the events here in April, but unfortunately, it's not going to be able to work out. However, I am really hoping to be there before her exhibition closes in July. But I certainly hope that you'll be able to check it out as well. It's an amazing show. I've seen the works, I've seen the book, and so if you're able to get out there and especially get a copy of that book, it is something very, very special. So, DY, thank you, and I look forward to chatting with you soon in Santa Fe. Well, we're back for a sixth season, and you're going to hear and see some changes moving forward, but the format is pretty much going to stay the same. We're going to still have new and amazing guests joining us, with some old friends returning, and we'll be having some very serious discussions about the threats to Indian country with this new administration. So we're going to bring in some very special people for that. So please stay tuned, because we will be announcing those shows as they air, or before they air. I'm also really excited to announce that this amazing company, Pod for Good, is now editing and producing this podcast. Jesse, over at Pod for Good, is also the producer for the other podcast, Beyond the Art, which I co-host with Cray Beaumont Flynn. He and his team have been doing an amazing job on that podcast, and I'm really excited for what they're going to be doing with this one as well. So, Jesse, thank you for coming on board and taking care of our little podcast here. I'm really excited. I also want to thank the Indigenous Association for hosting me in the recording studio. If you need a great place to record, give the Indigenous Association a call and reserve your time. We're down here in downtown Fargo. I also want to thank you for joining us and spending your time listening to what I feel is a very important story and perspective from our community. So please join us next time as we speak with another incredible person. The one sort of technical note I want to throw in is that the podcast is now going to be the first and third Wednesday every month. And so, we're going to be twice a month. If there's a third Wednesday in the month, we're just going to skip that and just come back on the first Wednesday again. So we're still coming back. You're still going to see us, but you're going to get a week break between different podcasts. So first and third Wednesday. I'm Joe Williams. You can find me on our Instagram page, on our Facebook page, and at the official Five Plain Questions website, 11warriorarts.com. There you will find this and past episodes of the podcast. We are no longer on X for very obvious reasons. If you have a suggestion for someone for me to interview, or you are an organization that would like to support this podcast, please check out the webpage and message me. I'd really like to hear from you. Also, soon, we're going to have some Five Plain Questions podcast merchandise available at the website for you to check it out. I'm really excited about this. As soon as that's ready, I'm going to let you know. It's going to be, all the merch that you would find with other things on there. And it'll be a way for you to be able to support this podcast now that we're independent. And so, I'm really excited to share that with you and for you to see that. So, okay, that's a lot for the first episode. So, it's exciting to be back where I have more support on this podcast than I've ever had before. And I'm just really excited that I have a marketing team, I have a social media team, an editing team, and there's another big announcement coming about this podcast that I'm really excited to share. And also, too, we have some incredibly huge guests coming for this next year. And, we've had big guests in the past. And so I'm really excited for the people that are coming into the studio virtually in some cases, and for me to go into their space. And we're going to have a really big year this year, probably our biggest year yet. So please stick with us. Check it out. All that said, let's not forget about D.Y. Begay, an amazing artist. She has a website. It's Navajo-Indian.com. Google her, D.Y. Begay, and support her and all the artists that we have on this podcast. Artists need to be supported, especially in this time where the administration is now taking over museums, taking over the arts, and hijacking the creative voice that so many of us have. Now is the time to step up and to support artists. So please join me in doing what you can to not just support the arts, but to preserve the voice and the perspective of our fellow Americans with our community. So yeah. All right. You take care. You take care of yourself. And we'll see you next time. This has been an 11 Warrior Arts production.